Welcome in, everyone. This is the Soccer Talk Lads podcast, the STL podcast for short, the Klaus podcast, if you're in the know. The Klaus cast, the pod Klaus, I don't know. We're road testing.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And we are here. It is a day in March, the 7th of March. That's 8 days before the Ides of March, for those who are keeping track at home.
Keep track of your Julius Caesars, everyone, please.
That's right. We are here in three of America's most mid-tier cities. I am from Jacksonville.
God, that's so accurate.
Joined by Justin all the way from Kansas City. Justin, how's KC these days? Mid?
Mid? Just as it ever is, as mid as ever.
And Ian is checking in from suburban St. Louis. Ian, we won't specify where in the suburbs, but how's it going out there today?
It's great. This is the high tier part of the city. The quote unquote city.
This is the high tier part of the mid tier suburbs of the mid tier cities.
That's right. Yeah,
that's right.
We are here and excited to talk about what finally happened. I would call it dream fulfillment for many in the St. Louis soccer community, and that is the debut not just of St. Louis City SC, which obviously we saw in Austin last week, but the home debut of St. Louis City SC, the first MLS game hosted by the city of St. Louis. And it was everything you could have hoped for it to be and more. I was not there in person. Justin was. We'll get the live perspective. We'll get the television perspective. We'll talk about it all. And we'll talk about, most importantly, and I think let's do this first, because this is like the boring part almost, but like, let's talk about the game, because I thought it was really interesting to watch, how they played. They're obviously, they won 2 games. Spoiler alert, they won this game 3-1 over Charlotte. They won 2 games. At least one of those games is against a team that most people think is going to be pretty tough competition this year. Not this one, but the other one. And they've done it in pretty interesting fashion. I mean, we can talk about how they were gifted some goals in this game. Some would argue they were gifted all 3 goals, but the reality is, I think our hard pressing up tempo style that is, maybe a compensation for the lack of just down the line talent that we have on this team is really paying off in spades so far this season. And even though we had some goals that went our way that were quote unquote lucky, I think we had as equally many or more opportunities that were hard won, great scoring chances that just missed for this reason or another. And so I don't think, even though the goals were a little fluky, I don't think you can take anything away from the win here and everything they did. It started very well. The first 20 minutes or so, I would say they were pretty dominating and had complete control. And then Charlotte started to calm things. A breakdown our side of midfield led to a break the other way that created the goal scoring opportunity for Capetta. Not great defensively there, not a good look. But that is one of the risks that you take when you play that high pressing game, I would say, is you're going to allow some breaks the other way. What were your thoughts on that goal, Justin, just from like a tactical breakdown perspective?
Yeah, and it's very similar to what you saw with the Jersey goal in Austin, where it's kind of against the run of play. Capetti, it's a nice little run. I wrote about it in my kind of post-game article. It's a nice little run where Charlotte is coming. They have not necessarily numbers, but City's grouped up from turning the ball over at that kind of side of the field. And they're able to just kind of interchange with their run. So Capetti kind of runs underneath and is able to kind of get free, splits center backs, and then as they kind of lay it off to relieve the pressure, send the ball in, and he's just able to get onto it. And just not really marked tight enough. And it's similar to what they saw in Austin, where they talked about wanting to block passes in, they talked about wanting to close down on balls, and that's kind of not what happened in that goal. So,
yeah, I agree. Ian, how were you feeling after 20 minutes and Charlotte had scored the first and at that point only goal? I guess that's defined by first. First goal is always the only
goal, but also the only goal. So
yeah. Me and all the homeboys say fuck Capetti. That guy sucks. And the whole crowd agreed.
Yeah, he became increasingly unpopular over the course of the game.
Public enemy number one.
Largely owing to the fact that maybe about 10 minutes after this play happened, there was a breakdown in the box where he fell down. He would say that he was, forced to fall down and that it should have been a penalty. I don't think anybody really agreed with him on that. Including,
they looked at it VAR wise and it just didn't even get a second look. So
yeah, obviously you weren't seeing the broadcast, Justin, but the MLS broadcast didn't agree. Although, of course, one of those broadcasters was Taylor Twellman, so maybe that's not the most impartial source.
Why would he be? Is he like Homer or?
Yeah,
what are you trying to say?
I don't know. But yeah, I mean,
entangled.
He was complaining the rest of the game, and I would say that kind of the emotional letdown of that kind of led to them.
What was great about that too is that so they got tangled up, and Berkey, I think his brain just works in a way where he wanted to let it go. He wanted to release the ball to just transition to the other side. But as he's running, he sees Capetti out of the corner of his eye and completely backtracks before letting go of the ball to yell at him, which I thought was the best part of that entire sequence.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think that kind of breakdown, the loss of mental focus is kind of what created the second goal, which of course was an own goal and kind of a fluky one. But it's another situation where just the power and presence and size of Klaus kind of forces a rush clearing attempt that they put into the back of their own net, which is not where you want those to go.
No,
generally
not.
So it was a lucky break, I would say, to get back into it, but it was a break that wasn't entirely unforced, I don't think either.
Yeah, I mean, the ball is lofted in for Klaus, and the defender just rises up to, defend him and just gets on the ball instead. So, it's definitely caused by the pressure. It doesn't come against the run of play necessarily. It just obviously is a deflection off the opposing player. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the real kicker, no pun intended, is soccer, so everything's a kicker. They surrendered a penalty in the 50th minute. It was a handball as the ball came in across the perimeter of the goalie box, and it was pretty undeniably a handball. His positioning. I always kind of am a little sus that those very perimeter handballs are just a straight up penalty, but those are the rules. So
yeah, and
definitely a penalty.
A lot of times, even if it is inadvertent, putting yourself in that body position to block the ball and your hands kind of come up and get in the way of the cross. Yeah. So that's what causes it.
Yeah, definitely. And Edvard Livin eventually stepped up, which no one attempts to pronounce his name that phonetically, but I will. I'll keep the
A.
And he slotted it home high to the left side. Just
emphatic.
Just the old kick it as hard as you possibly can approach, which is my personal favorite penalty.
I've watched this about 100 times, honestly.
Yeah, it was a good pen. It was a very nice pen. And from that point on, I don't want to say Charlotte never threatened, but I never really felt like this was a game that we were going to lose after we got the go-ahead goal. We had the another giveaway to our own striker, this time Klaus instead of who was it last game? Stroud?
Yeah, Stroud would have been the one that was on the receiving end of a gift. This time it's Klaus.
This was another gift, but it's also, as I was saying earlier, it's also Klaus pressing hard and being in the right place and putting pressure on the defense and them feeling like they have to pass back. And while it's a giveaway and the keeper's nowhere near in position, it was still a pretty nice chip to get it over him and get it in the net, and took the composure, and that was the game. We won 3-1. It was a spectacle, which we'll talk about the spectacle in a minute, but just from the tactical standpoint, I certainly feel a lot more confident about this team than I did before the two games. That's probably stupid and goes without saying, but they look like the best version of what they have the potential to be. they will have some games, I'm certain, where they are carved up and probably lose like 4-0 because
potentially even this weekend. Potentially.
Yeah, potentially. But like all I really wanted from this first season is just not to be an embarrassment, not to be FC Cincinnati in their inaugural season. I think we've already got more points than they got all season. So,
2 wins, maybe. I mean,
what are your guys' takeaways through 2 games just from a purely tactical perspective?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, well, when we talked about before the season even kicked off, like, all we wanted to see was a cohesive game plan and them to have an identity, and they clearly have an identity. The tactical adjustment I thought was nice. Like, I kind of wrote about something similar in the run up to this game about how Charlotte played very narrowly, and if they can somehow exploit those like out wide spaces, especially with how Charlotte lined up in this formation that they came in with, pulling Giottini up into the same line as Klaus and kind of having Oshak and Stroud instead of being wingers, being like kind of, I would say, more inside forwards, so they're in that half space, but not quite on that far wing to give lanes for Nelson or Winsky to run up and down. And that second goal is caused by Nelson getting the ball in the St. Louis half, having a nice run, laying it off to Stroud, who kind of has a nice 1-2 with Giottini, and then release him forward. And then as he tries to send it in, it's the handball. So the way that they were able to kind of open up those wide spaces, it leads to the Klaus or the own goal as well, where they're kind of set up in that half space to send the ball into Klaus that the defender rises up to. And yeah, I thought tactically, and the way that this team has bought into those tactics is everything you could ever want out of this team.
Do you think they're going to stick to that 4-2-2-2 look, or do you think they're
I think you see changes? Like, it's essentially the same thing. Whereas in Austin, they had Klaus up top and they had Oshak, or I forget who, maybe it was Alm. They had Alm kind of right underneath him. So when Giottini came in, he was playing that same level, but had kind of rotated out to the side. So it's essentially the same formation, just with like little changes with how they're lining up, just to help exploit that space. So I think you see a lot of adjustments, staying with 4 at the back, and then just like slight changes in how the midfield is just kind of spaced and starts the game. But yeah, I thought it's very interesting.
I was just say, what do we think of like other than obvious fanboying, fangirling, fan whatevering over Klaus? What do we think of Klaus through 2 games here? Like, I will admit that like he's scored and he looks good, but I also feel like visually he stands out so much that it's almost like this guy's not good, right? Or like he just lumbers in such a way that I'm like, you seem so out of place.
He's not athletic, is he? He can't be.
No. he's definitely like, I didn't know what to expect about a lot of these players. I'm not going to pretend I sat here and scouted them for hours, but like, he's a force. I think that's the best thing you can say about him, is like, there is anywhere he is on the field, he's there and he's causing problems. He's obviously not your Mohamed Salah, like incredibly intricate, speedy, technical striker, but I think I think we saw in the goal he scored in Austin, like there was a lot of technique on that goal. It wasn't just a be in the right place and hit it with your big meaty skull goal.
Yeah.
It was like, the pullback and the touch on the finish were both showed me enough that I was like, okay, this guy isn't just a physical presence. He does have some finishing skill. And I'd say the same thing about the chip in the third goal in this game. Like, again, that's every highly paid soccer striker should score that goal 100%, but like, you still have to score it, and he still did, and it still looked nice, so like,
yeah. And it's that coupled with him being like such an important piece as like the tip of the press too.
Yeah. And I like, there's definitely meme potential there, but like, I think he's really good. I mean, I don't think he's the best player on this team. I think that would be Blom or Levin, who are really kind of the critical pieces of the midfield and make everything go on their respective sides of midfield. But like, he's a force, and as much as there's kind of that meme potential and we love him, like, I think he fits the system really well. And, he's got a home here now. So
Yeah, I've done a lot of Klaus digging into because I'm writing a piece for St. Louis Mag, which shameless plug will be on the newsletter on Wednesday. So check that out. But he had kind of a similar play style when he was at Lask in Austria, that they play that same kind of high octane, very quick, try to get Klaus running onto the ball style of attacking soccer, which they weren't asking him to do at Hoffenheim and when he's been elsewhere. So I think it's him having a defined role that highlights his strengths instead of like
Yeah.
tries to ask him to do something else.
Which is funny because he doesn't seem to have, I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
No,
but like
I
he
was
doesn't seem to
done,
have,
Steven.
he doesn't seem to have that foot speed that like
Yeah.
makes you think of like a high attacking presser kind of
But
person.
he like starts so far up the field that
Yeah.
you don't need him to be running nonstop to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. By the way, I looked it up. In the 2019 Major League Soccer season, in Cincinnati's inaugural season, they had 24 points and 6 wins. So
Okay, so a third of the
we
way
have
there. It's good.
we have 25% of their point total, and I'm just going to calculate this really quickly. We have 25 games in hand on them.
Okay.
So I think we can do it. They did have an unfair advantage. They had 34 games their season. We only had 27 this year because of the whatever that thing is called, the competition. What's the competition?
Leagues Cup, you know, that cup where we stop prime playing dates in June before the start of the heat of the summer. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah,
But
it's a
yeah,
good time.
so just as long as we leave 24 points Cincinnati in the dust, we'll be doing all right. Every win that we gets us, you know, this 1/8 of the way there. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, and like the whole thing with MLS is it's so hard to win on the road. So we already have one road win, and clearly the home environment is going to be hard for other teams to come into play. So from here on out, it's just like taking care of your home games the best you can. Like we'll talk about Portland in a bit, but that's a tough game that you're going across the country. You're playing a team who desperately needs a win in their own house. And it's going to be hard. It's not always going to be this easy, but they look like they belong. That's all you can say.
Yeah, they definitely don't look out of place or look like they're a disaster of a team.
Steven, the fun stat. So 80% of teams that win their first 2 games make the playoffs. So as long as we're not that 20% that doesn't, I'll be happy.
Good.
Coin flip, if you will.
Oh, we're going to add to that stat one way or another.
That's right.
It's going to be fun. Yeah.
That's right. Now that we've talked about the game and the tactics, let's talk about the environment. I thought it was everything you could have hoped for and more. I wasn't there in person, but just on TV, the stadium looks so nice. It's so great that they built a dedicated facility for this from the ground up and didn't just make it, you know, didn't just try to carve out Busch Stadium or God forbid Edward Jones Dome or something like that.
No, baby.
I really looks, you know, it looks like it's part of the city. It looks like it belongs. The crowd was bumping from the very start. I know there were naughty words, but it was after 10 p.m. So it was the adult, you know, it was the adult tour.
You can't just say we can swear and then change the rules.
Yeah, that's right. But seriously, I mean, you were there, Justin, on TV. It looked incredible. The opening tifo and everything that they did was really, really cool.
It was very loud. I think that's a lot of like how new stadiums are constructed. When I was down in Nashville, the like press is inside, so you can't necessarily hear like how loud it gets. But here, the press row is outside, like right underneath the like TV broadcast. So you're kind of out in the thick of it, and it was very loud. My ears are hurting at one point after Klaus got subbed off. So it's like definitely that sound reflects back into the stadium, and it's imposing in a way. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a tough place to play. I mean, I think it's obviously hard to extrapolate from the first game ever, and like everybody's going to be there and be excited. If it's August and we've lost 5 games in a row, it might feel a little different, but like I don't think certainly not this season, and I really doubt at any point in MLS this is going to be like an easy road game. You know, I think the environment's always going to be there, and there's always going to be people that are excited. So
yeah, those scenes like right before the open where they gave me goosebumps for sure, sitting there and seeing the tifos go around.
Yeah, there were scenes for sure. Ian, your thoughts on the environment, the vibes?
Oh God. Well, the vibes were immaculate. As the
vibe check.
kids
Yeah.
say, like, vibes were vibing. I was very jealous. I feel like I would have paid a good chunk of money to go to this in retrospect. I was like, oh man, looks freaking dope. I don't know if I'd sit in the supporter section only because they get like smoked
Only because
on.
I'm not a
And
supporter.
I mean, yeah, I don't really like this team that much.
Uh-huh.
And you get like doused in like, sticky beverages and what have you. But I'll sit right next to it. I'll cheer them on from the safety of a regular section.
Safety of not being in the beer shower.
I'm sure, I don't know if they'll always be like that, but I was like, this is so cool. But then I was like, man, people are getting wet.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be up for it. If you're not up for it, that's okay.
I like all the flags. So, I mean, I just thought the environment was really good because I was maybe not worried, but like I was a little curious to see like if people were going to be excited, but then really like I just didn't know how many people in St. Louis are going to be like into soccer, if that makes sense. Like you would think there'd be that many people, but I was like,
we're
are they all going to
America's
show
first
up?
soccer capital.
I mean, of course.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. The middest tier city.
There was a piece in MLS soccer.com ahead of this game talking about Charlie Boehm wrote a piece talking to a lot of old heads in St. Louis. They were talking about how at like Crondelet Park there'd be crowds of like 6,000 people to watch just like some Sunday game. Like that's dope. I enjoy knowing that was
that's
thing.
Dope. Is it true? That's a different question. That's dope. Even if it was 2,000, though, it's still.
Yeah, well, they're talking to a guy that was like back in the 60s or whatever, so I believe it.
They did have some line about like
people from the 60s don't exaggerate. So
no, they would
right.
never. It would never grow in folklore. Yeah,
that's right.
It's some line about like the first soccer game in St. Louis. I'm assuming like recorded soccer game was like 100. It was like 200 feet from here in like 1860 or something. And it was part of me was kind of like, this is getting kind of hockey. This is kind of like, all right, cool.
There was a very Doc Emmerich opening to this one. I'll give them that. Yeah.
On the frozen Mississippi.
There are two teams on this football field, but only one of them is new tonight. That sort of thing.
Oh God, no.
You remember Doc? Those were his intros, man. Only one of these teams has hoisted the Stanley Cup before, but even they had a different name when it happened. Yeah.
It's corny, but I'm an absolute sucker for it.
When Doc Emmerich does it. When Doc Emmerich does it, it works. When anybody else tries it, it's a disaster.
John Goodman. We like when John Goodman does it.
Oh, John Goodman. Oh, you put John Goodman in anything, especially anything St. Louis, and it's just hype. I mean, Afton High School hype, baby.
I do like that he says he's from Afton? LA, Lower Afton.
Does he say that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is dope. So I've spent a lot of time in Lower Afton.
Yeah. Sounds seedy. I mean the stadium looks gorgeous and like I don't know, did you probably were in the press box for most of it. Were you able to like get out onto like the concourse?
Yeah, I did a lap. I did a lap when everyone was filing in, which was a mistake because it was a little bit claustrophobic. But
Dustin did scream, "I'm dying!"
But there were a ton of people there. Yeah, it was very cool. It's very hard to walk through that concourse if you're hungry too. There's a lot of good smells in that stadium.
Oh man.
Yeah, I have no complaints.
You need a good smellscape. Smellscape is essential.
They can trap you. I was like, I already ate, but
Ian, did you not like the word smellscape? Did that upset you?
No, it just made me think of like a billion other things called something scape that are all like sci-fi. I was like, oh, smellscape, that came on after Xena on Saturday afternoons.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm really excited to go there and try all the like food they have because they've done a lot of like partnerships with like local restaurants and everything. I know there's a place that me and Arlene like to go to off of Cherokee. I'm trying to remember what it's called, the Fat and Calf. It's like Filipino food, and you can get it there now, which is sick. It's like, damn, I don't have to eat like a burger, or whatever. Which
the
I mean is good
place
too.
Was smelling real good. That's like right at my heart. My dad had a Steve's hot dog. He said it was good. If you want that,
there you go.
If you want that little insight into what a 55-year-old soccer fan might think about it.
Give us more insights about 55-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean they like Klaus a lot. Not related. I think it's just an easy name to chant when
yeah.
you're being driven home, but it was
Can't chant Giogini.
yeah.
It's too much, too hard. I'm interested to see what the crowds are like as the season goes along. Like I'm sure they'll be packed, regardless of how this team's doing. Hopefully, I don't know if like the doldrums of summer and Cardinals baseball will swing people over one way or another, but like it's just crazy to have driven by that stadium so many times as it was being built, and now when it's been built but empty, and then see like just video shots of like thousands of people swarming around it. It's like, holy cow.
Yeah, there were a lot of people outside the stadium too that like didn't even have a ticket. They're just down there to take it all in, and they'd have the game out in the like out on the plaza as well. So if you want to go down there just to watch the game, you can. Which I think is cool.
I'm trying to think to myself now. I could like do it quick, but I got the energy. There's got to be like Blues games that get played on Saturdays for the next like month and a half during a home game, and I'm just like, what is that going to be like? Because those are close proximity and share lots of parking. Now I get it. This mid-tier city is A+ on empty parking structures, so it should be no problem.
Ian, does it help that the Blues are tragic right now? Does that help or hurt this equation?
I mean, it definitely helps it, but like, you know, I see lots of people still out there still hyped for any sort of sport. So
yeah, Battlehawks potentially in that same area.
Oh,
they play on Sundays, don't they? So it might be.
Oh yeah, man, that'd be sick if they played on Saturday though, and then you had like a rando Cardinals game on Saturday. Let's go. Let's see if we can split this city asunder.
Steven, have they talked about this down Jacksonville? Has this made it
Put
your
this
way
down in half. Yeah, we've talked a lot about St. Louis parking emergencies.
They don't have that problem in Jacksonville. It's the largest city.
Oh, they got land, baby. They can put them anywhere.
Park wherever the hell you want.
We'll park you wherever we want. I parked behind a mortgage broker under a bridge the other day. It was great. Didn't feel like I was going to get stabbed at all.
That is one thing to take into consideration, fans. If you're coming into St. Louis, try not to park under any bridges. Typically not the best plan.
Yeah, good lighting. You want good lighting.
Yeah.
I don't need lighting. I'm good.
Don't park in the Foundry parking lot. Apparently, that's doesn't have good lighting from what I hear.
So. Oh yeah. Oh. What's the other one? What's the one across the way?
There's more to that
That's
story,
also
and I'll
sketch.
get that offline.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm going in like May. We should all go though. And we're gonna make plans right now. Everyone open your
I would love to all go. Also, I'm definitely gonna find some people that want to go to the Orlando game when we play down here on August 26th. Right when you want to be in Orlando, in a bowl of heat at
that's not gonna be
PM.
Sticky at all.
Oh no, that's when you want to go to Orlando. I'm going to do that. I'm going to plan the whole next day at Epcot, and by the end of the week, I'll weigh 14 pounds and be a shriveled hulk of a human being. But it'll be great.
Orlando, that has famously never been slandered on this podcast.
Orlando's great.
Right. Orlando is a very safe town if you're not in the dangerous parts. So, as Justin recently learned.
A mid-tier Florida city? Is that like would that be mid-tier?
I would call Orlando very mid. Yeah. I mean, it's like a beach city that has no beach. That's how I would describe it.
Take that, Disney.
Yeah, well, it's now its own. Now Disney has no longer got its own tax breaks. So
oh, darn it.
Oh, sorry, Disney.
DeSantis ruining the state.
I was too.
Orlando is literally a mid city though, because it's right there in the center. I don't know how somebody planned a big city in Florida that wasn't on the coast, but they did.
Seems like a no-brainer to me. Why were people trying to get away from the coast? Like, how are there enough people there?
Get me.
Can we go somewhere? Can we go somewhere with less ocean and more?
I want this. Please? I want the humidity. I want the mosquitoes. I want and the gators,
everything bad and nothing good. That's what I'd like. That's Orlando, baby.
Anyway,
she was going to Alabama.
Can you put it on a floodplain as well, if possible?
Ideally, we want to be below sea level.
That's right. Do you guys know who the worst attended MLS team last year was?
I'm going to say Inter Miami because of their stupid Fort Lauderdale situation. Is that true?
That's correct, yes. but they were in a weird situation that wasn't in Miami.
Yeah, so they're playing in Fort Lauderdale in like a temporary stadium that they've been playing in for like 4 years now. I haven't heard anything about the Miami stadium, so let me look that up right now.
Yeah.
But they've been wanting to build something downtown for obvious reasons.
Because it's downtown Miami.
Yeah.
Why don't they just play where the Dolphins play? I don't know where
Miami,
that
which is
That might
very
be old.
small. The city of Miami is a little bit like the city of St. Louis. It's very small, but Miami-Dade County very big. But Miami is actually in Miami-Dade County, unlike St. Louis City. So, you know.
We don't have to dig up with the old
Current
problems.
plans.
But to be fair, unlike downtown West, Miami does exist. So
Oh boy! Oh,
I've been to
we just
downtown
talked
West.
about
I
the
haven't been to
stadium.
that's right. Well, the stadium is in St. Louis City. It's just not in downtown.
All right,
West.
so by 2025, that's the current plan for their $25,000 or 25,000 seat specific stadium. $25,000 would be very cheap for a stadium.
Paper mache stadium.
The athletic soccer staff writes also, Justin, did you meet the athletic soccer staff on Saturday? How is he? Is he a nice guy?
Just the staff in general. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Is he like a robot? The athletic soccer staff.
They write, the atmosphere at St. Louis City Park Stadium was not a surprise to anyone who has been paying attention to MLS expansion in recent years, or to anyone who understands the history of soccer in this country. That St. Louis is perhaps the truest soccer town in the U.S. has been chronicled a lot over the last few weeks. That it took this long for MLS to land in St. Louis was really the only surprise, and the sold-out red blazoned crowd of 22,423 that witnessed the expansion side's 3-1 stadium opening win over Charlotte FC put on as much of a show as the home side. Bradley Carnell said, "We are fighting with the emotions of 70 years of history and bringing the MLS to St. Louis." And then, in light of the success of the debut, Don Garver was not willing to do what? Rule out expansion? Yeah.
Talk about anything at all.
Right.
Commit one way or another to anything in his life. I think
That's
is
right.
how that went.
That's exactly right.
Don Garver was non-committal.
That's right. So that's the first two games of the season done and dusted. Are we going to win the third? Let's move on to talk about that. Not Ian, you don't know anything. No, I'm just kidding. So mean.
Ian, cover your laptop up again.
Out to the shadow realm.
What is it? What is it, like a little switch?
It's a little physical switch that Dell thought was really smart.
It's gonna pay off. If you're watching on video right now.
Do they know that there's like a camera button in every Zoom call? Apparently not.
No.
Dell has not gotten that technology yet.
That's right. Now, Justin, you said Portland might give us a challenge, but when I look at the table, we are in second place and Portland is all the way down in eighth. So I would like you to explain that to me, please.
Yeah, well, Portland lost to LAFC last week.
Okay, so they're not even good because LAFC's only won one game. They've only played one game, but they've only won one game.
They're no undefeated team, that's for sure.
Yeah, the only team you can even argue that we're not as good at as is the Seattle Sounders. That's it.
Which I think is fair. I think that's a fair assessment. If the Sounders are better than us, I think that's fair. Yeah. 4
teams in this league have 6 points. And I know we're better than New England and Inter Miami because one of them's in New England and one of them's in Miami. So anyway, what is your take seriously on the Portland Timbers and how they will challenge this team? And
yeah, I think Portland in general is a tough place to play. It's hard to go there and grab points. They just lost to LAFC in a game that they played really bad in the first half and were able to come back in the last 30 minutes or so. They finally got a goal from Evander. So they've kind of grew into that game in a way that LA let off the gas a bit. So you can't really say too much about that. But I think, Portland, with the way they play, they're very pragmatic. Obviously, our play style is much different than LAFC's. They played Sporting in the first game of the year and won 1-0. And Sporting obviously play not a similar style necessarily, but they also play high intense. And while SKC has a lot of issues and are missing a lot of players, you can look at that loss as, potentially, especially with how Portland played last week, them kind of growing into the season a bit more. There's things to be worried about, especially with how both the goals from both last week and the week before come from just poor transition defense and having our center backs sliced through. So a bit worrying with that. I will say that Portland haven't gotten a ton from Evander yet this season in terms of like his growth into the game. And they went down early to LAFC via a Giorgio Chiellini set piece. I think it was off a corner header. So
Can you say Giorgio Chiellini like 5 more times?
Giorgio Chiellini, Giorgio Chiellini, Giorgio Chiellini. That's all I got.
That's that big 550 content right there.
That's right. That's what the people
Call
want on
us.
AM radio.
Call us,
Heyo.
we're right here.
But yeah, so obviously I think it'll be another fun game. I'm sure Bradley Carnell will have some tactical adjustments from this game to that game. I look forward to diving into that this week a bit if you follow my writing. But yeah, I don't think anyone is too deluded to think that we're going to walk through the rest of the season, but Portland are still a very dangerous team.
They've only scored 3 goals though in 2 games though, so
Right. And we
Bad-
scored
bad
6.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah, double. Yeah, I'm a little worried. I feel like if not this week, there's going to be a week where they obviously lose, and I'm just worried about the bottom sort of dropping out and people, fair weather fans, new
This
fans,
team
whatever,
doesn't know
realizing,
how
like,
to
uh-oh.
lose. They've never lost before. What's
Hey,
gonna
as long
happen?
as you pass it to us in your own half, baby, give us the W. As long as we're 12 against 10 out there.
That's what you
Pretty
could say.
good.
Like Portland weren't crazy successful against Sporting Express. They only won that game 1-0, and like I think that we've looked better than that Sporting team has looked. So you could see that as a favorable matchup. I don't know. It's only 2 games into. It's still like hard to really get a good grasp on how other teams are going
If
to be
we
playing.
get the convincing W over Austin FC, how high do we just go
man.
undefeated? Or not Austin FC, we literally just said Portland.
Yeah, undefeated.
Yeah. It's okay, Steven. I went through an entire segment last week where I thought we were playing Vancouver, so I think you're good.
I hate to remind you of that. And speaking of which, I don't mean to turn on you faster than Jay so turned on Sami Zayn, but 7-0 Liverpool over Manchester United.
How brutal.
Please explain, Justin. Please.
I can't. There's no explanation. Like, there's nothing. You just have to throw that game out. Like, Ten Hag came out afterwards talking about how like unprofessional the team was. And like, you can't be responding to a game like that. But like nothing ever would say like they had been playing so well leading up to this game. They had barely lost in the past like 3 months to be trounced 7-0 by a Liverpool team who, Steven, correct me if I'm wrong, have not been necessarily great this season.
I mean they've definitely been better since the transfer window, but Darwin's been picking up steam and Gakpo has been a good addition, but they are not a great team. They're not a Liverpool team of old.
David De Gea being given a 2.9 rating by FOMA for this game, so that's not a great sign.
I think if I was a Manchester United fan, I would say the same thing. Like you got to brush it off and just ignore it. Basically, my concern is, forgive me for talking out of turn about your team, their response in the actual game does not suggest to me that they're going to be able to do that. Like their antics during the game, especially Bruno Fernandes.
Don't even get me started.
De Gea, that's where I would be more concerned. But if they come back into form in their next game and they're just fine, then I'm not too worried about it. Liverpool on their side, I mean, I don't think I'm stretching too much to say that Jurgen Klopp is certainly one of, I would say, probably the best manager in world football right now. And I think he's done something really interesting. Obviously, during the transfer window, everyone on earth thought that Liverpool needed to add at midfield, even though everyone knows very well that they hope to and expect to sign Jude Bellingham this summer, and now apparently also maybe Mason Mount, which is just weird.
I mean, the thing is that every club on earth wants to try to sign Jude Bellingham. So,
but I mean, their approach dictates that they must feel like they haven't
that's true
to get him, because if they're loading up for just that and then they don't do it, then they're morons.
Henderson was also doing a bit of tampering at the last national team camp too, which I
more
think
than
is
a bit, I would say, since the World Cup and everything. But I mean, I think to Jurgen's credit, they went out and got Gakpo, who's a superlative young talent, and he's just changed up his style. He's playing with the ball more. He's not not counterattacking as much, and it's really, it's really been what they need right now, because that midfield cannot engage the counterattack the way they want to. And it's been nice to see. It's this tactical change that I think could be enough to get them in to Champions
I think a lot
League
of that too.
contention.
Harvey Elliott has been like something's
Harvey
unlocked
Elliott's been
Harvey
great,
Elliott too.
and Basetic has also been a godsend, and he's so young, and it's one of those things where you still kind of worry he's being overexposed, but like, yeah, Harvey Elliott, who looked pretty bad for a lot of the season, looked really, really, really good in this game.
Which I think, like, young players, right? Like, that's going to happen there.
Yeah, definitely. Nunez has also seemed to find his footing finally, and he's looked really good. He's a monster.
Yeah, he was never going to be the guy who kept missing those chances.
Yeah,
like, nothing would have ever.
He's like if Klaus was unbelievably mind-numbingly fast and also just beautiful to look at as a human being. Like, he's just the total package. But I think Liverpool's in good shape. It's crazy how fast things change in the Premier League, because like 2 weeks ago they were in 10th, and I was like, they're not even going to make Europe. Yeah. And now I'm like, oh, they'll probably be a Champions League team. It's fine, no big deal.
And you're really, like, especially if you're trying to bridge that gap, like, you need like a cohesive run of form put together. Like, you've seen that with Manchester United in the past, where they'd been out to lunch and then they put together like a run of 10 games.
That's right.
Ian, how are you feeling about Tottenham's 1-0 loss to Wolves last week? How not exciting of a game was that for you?
It was it was excruciating to go back and watch, because God. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change. Yeah, I'm not going to change. This is who I am. Yeah, God has abandoned me.
Was the joy just
one-time switch? You're like a national team player.
Yeah. Was the joy just slowly ripped out of you as Adama Traore scored in the 82nd minute?
Yeah, so like Wolves made like 5 subs, and then Spurs made their first sub at the 80th minute, and they subbed in a guy who I had to look up, hasn't played very well for them in the past. Like, well, this is a grand start. This is a great start. But like throughout the whole game, like it was just like weird stuff. Like, I know they like to have like Son take free kicks sometimes. They had Kane take his free kick and he hit a freaking wall, which I also read is apparently the thing that happens. He's a great player, can't take a free kick. It's like Wolves made adjustments, Tottenham didn't. I feel kind of bad for like Son on this team for multiple reasons, but also I feel like they constantly pass the ball like behind his ass. Like, he's constantly having to pick it up from behind rather than being like I think of like a wide receiver hitting them in transition with like speed, and he's like, nope, he's got to collect it at 0 miles per hour and then start up the field. And I'm like, this is not his game. I watched like Son highlights during the World Cup or whatever, and some of the stuff he had in like with was he in Dortmund? Was that who he was with?
Yes.
Okay, I can't remember, but in Bundesliga team, I was like, man, this dude's fast as hell. I was like, how come I don't see that? How come I never get to see this shit happen? I don't know. Like, I don't actually put it too much on the players overall, actually, because I think like Wolves made an adjustment, on their bench basically, and Conte didn't do jack shit.
He played for Bayer Leverkusen.
Okay.
I hate to. I was like, that didn't sound right, but I'm just gonna say yes.
Do they also wear yellow? I don't know. For some reason, I had them in yellow. I could be totally wrong.
At times, yellow is a part of their color. But
Yellow is a color.
Yeah,
a primary color.
I know what you're saying though, Ian, because he's like almost wasted in a Conte style system where it's like his best work is in transition and getting the ball like while moving forward, just because that's how breakneck fast he is, and he's kind of just like wasted a bit. Not to say that he doesn't have skill in that system too, but you're not using him to his utmost potential.
It's just it's infuriating when you're trying to stay in the top 4, top 5, and you lose to a team like Wolves. Like, you like at very least get me a tie. At very least give me a Harry Kane late game goal. We can't even muster that in this game. That's like the low, right?
It was a
Harry
game
Kane
where
goal.
like they're almost playing for like a 0-0 tie. They're like, no goals will be scored here today.
You know what? No fun for anyone. Yeah, that feels very Conte. Yeah. I was looking at their schedule and it looks, I don't know, it looks doable. I mean, they still play, I don't know if they play Liverpool again. I think they play Manchester United one more time, but then they play some bottom of the barrel teams there. They put like Southampton once and stuff, and I'm like, come on, man, you can make up some room here. But then I see this game, I'm like, maybe not. Maybe every game is going to be a freaking must win.
Could be, and you could be that lucky.
Wow, nail biting, just absolutely
Yeah.
nail biting.
They finish off the year playing Newcastle United, Liverpool. But up until then, yeah, they play Nottingham Forest, Southampton, Everton, Brighton, Bournemouth, which are like, you should be destroying those teams. Ideally, you should be winning those games 1-0.
No, they're gonna slop it up. That's not the game plan. The game plan
those
is never
games
to be
are
sloppy.
a 75th minute Harry Kane winner and no looking back. Let me tell you.
God,
Have they ever just tried scoring early?
They did. They
What's
did
that
try
been
that
like?
shit. They tried that against Man City, and then they lost freaking like 4-2 or 5-2 or whatever. They scored 2 before the half. I was like, wow, fun stuff. And then they just got freaking train wrecked. You know what? I root for this team because I hope that someday this will all change, and then I can be like, look at me, I've suffered. Only I chose this. At least like with the Blues or whatever, they were here.
I was gonna say, you've just adopted a new Blues. Why have you done this to yourself?
This is what was told to me when I decided to pick them. Like,
that's on you then.
Yeah, that's my fault.
That is your fault.
Fool me how many times, it's all
you don't
my
have
fault.
to punish yourself, Ian.
You
don't have to.
I do. I'm Catholic.
Sure, statement has never been said.
That's part of it.
Well, we are a Catholic city. That's why soccer is so popular.
That's the punishment part of it.
Soccer, obviously a sport for socialists and Catholics, is what the saying's always.
That's right. Look at your countries. Look at your countries and tell me that's not true.
And if they're socialist and Catholic, they're gonna love it. They're gonna love this sport.
That's right. Oh boy. All right. One final thought on St. Louis City SC. Which player has impressed you the most so far through 2 games? Klaus is the obvious. That's like a free space. Everybody says Klaus. But if you were going to say not Klaus, who have you been most pleasantly surprised by through 2 games?
I'm going to say pleasantly surprised, like against the grain of my expectations for them, because I would say Blom, but Blom, I had high expectations just for like what I knew about his play style and how he's going to fit into the system. But Nicolas Gioacchini, I thought has been like kind of one of the driving forces for how well they're playing. Like to hit on that player, have him come in, and he just looks so at home. On that second goal, it started because Gioacchini is able to step up, like, and anticipate a pass coming through and start the press and start the counter. And I don't know, like, I think this system just seems to fit his skill set, and he has a lot of skill as well. So he's not just good in the press, but he also has quality when he's on the ball, and he hasn't like necessarily put the ball in the back of the net. But I think just his presence and what he's able to do. He had the assist on the Klaus goal in the first game. He created 2 chances this game, and yeah, I think he's been real good.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he has looked great, and I feel the same way about Blom. Blom might be my answer. I think he's just looked sensational. I had a friend who was at the game say he looked pretty bad in the first half. I didn't see that, but I could have missed something. But I think as far as the second half,
he's been good. And Carnell said he's still like kind of playing catch up after coming to camp. So
yeah, and I mean, he was involved in the first giveaway for the goal that they scored. I thought it was more of a team breakdown, but whatever the case, like, he's making plays and getting to balls, and I'm just seeing him make defensive plays that really change the game and make a big impact. And then I would say even more than that, Leuven is like, you really have to hit on your DPs. Obviously, that's a given. I knew nothing about either of ours. There was none of that kind of like, oh, this is a such and such player from the Premier League I've heard of. It's not no Jordan Shaqiri situation or anything like that. But like, he's been really good. He's been sensationally good. I think he's such a good distributor, and he had the free kick, obviously, or the goal kick, the penalty kick. I'll get the right kind of
That
kick.
one.
Corner kick, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I just thought he's looked great, and he's playing that critical role of distribution on the attack.
Been on the MLS Team of the Week twice now, Steve.
Look at that. Look at that. That's as many times as he's ever had the opportunity.
Yeah, he's never not made the MLS Team of the Week. So let's think about that for a moment.
Ian, who's your man of the matches, the 2 matches so far?
Yeah, I was going to say Leuven, because I've just been impressed with like his overall play style, and just like he seems like such a
swell guy.
just a great dude. Just like such an accurate like passer and kicker and stuff, like from the corners. He's looked really dangerous. I think there was like late in the game, this last game, where he basically like beat 9 guys into the corner. Like it was super late, everyone's tired, but I was like, what the heck? I was like, what's going on? I don't know. I like, obviously being one of the DPs, like I assume that he's going to be pretty good just because we went out of our way to go get him and everything. But I think between him and like Klaus, those are the guys that I feel like the most focused on, just to see what they have. And then I have been trying to sort of learn more about our MLS 2 guys that have come up and play on the squad, because I'm just very curious to see how some of that like homegrown talent works out. Like, I think it's really cool that they subbed in, I'm going to forget his name, the like 17-year-old
Miguel Perez.
Yeah, that was like really cool. I thought it was like an awesome moment. I don't know how much to hope he puts into like his first MLS season or whatever, but anything that looks positive about him would just be like a home run.
A home run, a homegrown home run, you might say.
Yeah, that's right. A goal. I don't know what other things happen in soccer.
Yeah, I think it's very like Perez in the first game looked really good. He didn't have like a little bit more of an abbreviated appearance in this game, but I think they're trying to take him along a little bit slower. But they have a lot of faith in him already, which I think is impressive, because he didn't even make the team necessarily right away. And it's kind of like grown his way through camp and through the start of the season.
Yeah. I mean, when you've won 2 games in convincing fashion, it's hard to find a lot of players that haven't looked good, but I do think all those guys have looked pretty strong. So that's it. I think we've covered everything. What were you going to say, Justin?
No, I was just going to say the only like downside I would say is our center backs are a little bit worse.
Watch what you say about our Ginger Prince. Okay.
I'm not going to say anything bad about him because I love him.
Listen, I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to roast these fools.
Like there will be time
to roast games.
Keep the positive vibes for now.
All right, I'm sorry. If everyone will forgive me, I apologize for taking the vibes down.
Right. You should apologize. All right, folks, that's a podcast. We got a podcast. This is a podcast. You've listened to a podcast. Congratulations.
And most importantly, our sponsors are happy.
Not only, and all our fans, not only does St. Louis have an MLS team, not only has that MLS team played both on the road and at home, but through 2 games, they are not only undefeated, they have had 2 victories, and they have 6 points of a possible 6. It's a very fun time to be a St. Louis and a soccer fan. And we'll be back after the game against Portland. See you later.
Adios.
See you on the big KTRS 550.